So we just issued the current issue of Neiman Reports. The cover asks the very provocative question, where are the women? And it analyzes what's been happening in the industry again, across media platforms. And it's a fairly depressing portrait if you're looking at gender balance. And we were looking at jobs at the very top. So people running, at the senior most position in a newsroom. And those numbers have been in decline over the past decade. We started work on the issue before Jill Abramson was fired at the New York Times, and the editor of Le Monde, who is a woman, was forced out on the same day and resigned. It's clear, though, that those firings gave a lot of energy to this conversation, this debate, and the Neiman Reports story has been much in circulation.
There's kind of this assumption that we all are on the same page. And, I really think it's important to talk about diversity among women. We come from different classes, we come from different races, we come from different religions and social backgrounds, and those things do matter. It doesn't mean that we don't have, in some places, a common agenda, but I always like to start by going big on that. There are differences. There's a difference if I am a woman who's an executive editor and I'm a woman who's a middle manager. We may even have different goals because of our place in the organization. So I think it's important to kind of remember that. The leader is not just a manager. We don't just have to manage your performance, how well you report or write your story. We also have to mentor. And especially, with young women and then with people of color too, to navigate some cultural issues in the organization and outside.
I'm an aviation journalist, and I've been in the business for 22 years, and I'm one of a handful of women and one of two people of color covering aviation. And I have had some really great male mentors that have kind of helped me navigate, because aviation is still kind of a homogenous environment. Now, I grew up as a military brat, so I'm used to being the only, and it was okay. So I'm comfortable. But when you have people who understand your talent and understand your drive and want to help you be better, it really is career enhancing. I think about people who have helped me in my career, and I don't know where I'd be without some of these people. I see a lack of confidence. And somebody was talking about that in the panel, and it was kind of a little painful to hear, because when I was younger, I had doubts in my abilities, even though I knew I was good at what I did. They called it the imposter syndrome. You always feel like you shouldn't be there and you don't deserve to be there. And, I covered different industries, but once I got into aviation, that was my passion. I basically get paid for my hobby. But I realized that people were interested in what I was writing. They valued my stories and my opinion. And then I realized that, people are paying me to do this, and they're asking me to do projects, and they're creating jobs for me, and that I was a badass. So the imposter syndrome for me went away. And that's what I hope that young women will get from this panel, that let go of the imposter syndrome, believe in your abilities and your own badassedness, and keep moving.
If bold doesn't work for you, just because it's a model you have seen as the sort of prototypical model, maybe from other men, maybe from women, find the fit for you. Find the style of leadership that works for you. And it was really funny, because when it was over, I had a number of women, including some very young women, some who were recent college graduates who were in their first jobs or second jobs. And this one woman said to me, I just did a piece about that. And she said, let's hear it for the introverts among us who still would love to run something but don't see ourselves as quite fitting that personality type.
So one thing, and I kind of learned this from, I've only maybe once or twice in my life, really, which is kind of sad, been in a position where a woman was the ultimate head of my news organization. But I do think when you have that position, there are things you could do and make sure that happen. I mean, you could certainly make sure that the hiring happens. And it's not just the numbers of people who come in, but thinking outside the box. And to me, this is kind of the next stage. You get in there and it's almost like civil rights. You've got a first generation that just wants to assimilate, but we can't afford to perpetuate the same models. To me, the next level is how do you redefine the model? And that means from A to Z. You're talking about what are the traditional positions you have to move up? It's not set in stone. If you have the power to change it, change it. Do we all have to become a national correspondent before we can become the editor? Do we all have to be a foreign correspondent before we can take on certain positions in the news organization? These are kind of in the old school method, the route to the top. You can change that, and there's nothing that stops you from doing it. So it really is to go from just inheriting the positions to taking them and using them as, it is the bully pulpit to transform the whole way you structure the news gathering process. I think what each woman has to do is find the style that's appropriate to who she is, period.